Hi and welcome to Join the Chat. I've got Richard Ward with me today. He's my husband and he's also chaplain at Mount Eden Prison. He used to be minister here with me and now has gone in a bit of a different direction, so he has some interesting insights at times from his work. Join the chat this morning. We have been addressing a couple of stories from Scripture. The first one from the Old Testament was the story of the beginning of the story of Joseph and his untimely throwing into a pit by his very angry and jealous brothers. And then the New Testament story is from Matthew when Jesus sends the disciples ahead in the boat, and then after having some time alone early in the hours of the morning, so still dark, and he appears to them in the storm walking on the waters and scares them. Some interesting stuff of when their fear is very clearly about Jesus arriving there, and they think that he's a ghost or something like that, and Jesus says, take heart, it is I, or I am, and do not fear. So those couple of stories, stories of anger, stories of how we deal with being in a storm, how we deal with our own sense of failure. There's a lot of things that kind of come up in those stories. So we're here to have a chat around whatever you'd like to bring up out of that. So over to you. Just put him on the spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I say, various things, and as you're talking, I'm thinking through what those passages were doing for me, and sense of failure is an interesting one because there's no reference in the text after Peter fails, there's no recriminations from his closest community. There was, assistance from Jesus, but we don't read anything of the disciples saying,
You stuffed it.
yeah, you're an idiot, you should have stayed in the boat with us, and that sort of thing. But actually, that corporately, somehow through that, that witnessing Peter's action, because we know he's also always sort of takes the lead and doesn't always think through what he's doing. But the disciples as a community allowed him to do that, and even in their fear, when he failed, Jesus was there to help, and it finished with them worshiping.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being reassured.
That leads to a really positive space.
Through a whole lot of different, understandings of what's going on.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I guess it's also important to realise that Peter doesn't just fail, he actually succeeds for a while, and there's that moment where he does walk on water, and I think that must have been an amazing moment for those in the boat as well, to see Peter do that, and then to watch him kind of lose focus to we're here, kind of take your eyes off Jesus, see the fear, see the storm, focus on the negatives, and suddenly things start to sink. And then witnessing Jesus just taking him out of that and going, you have such little faith, you're looking two ways, that whole sense of why do you waver, that whole word doubt is like, why do you look two ways? And I think that was the issue, was he was trying to kind of do two things, and that's when he started to sink, and Jesus is so quick to kind of gather him up and place him in the safety, and they're there then in the boat, and the storm finishes and they're in the safety, and then the whole community are in the safety, and they've witnessed something so profound that it leads all of them to worship.
But you talk about the storm finishing, but I think in your sermon you said actually it was a normal weather pattern.
Yeah.
In that the disciples weren't afraid about being in a boat or having a headwind and not making any progress, because that's
what you do in a storm.
In fact, a lot of them are fishermen anyway. So what the fear was that in that normal unsettled event, Jesus suddenly appeared. I think you make a comparison that there is another passage in another gospel passage that talks about real fear in the storm, but this wasn't it.
This isn't it, no.
And so it's this weird thing that the guys were at the boat were facing a hard time, but it was not an unexpected, what particularly unusual.
Kind of like
struggle.
bad things happen, yeah.
But it was a struggle for them to get to where they wanted to get to.
Yeah.
But what actually was the fear was, hey, Jesus is here with us in the midst of this.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Is it really
And
you?
it's really interesting, like, if we can see Jesus in the midst of the storm, does that make it even more tricky? You know, like, does that put a whole different expectation on us? Was there a sense that by Jesus entering the storm, somehow they had to, I don't know, do it differently maybe? I mean, what was it? Was it just that they couldn't comprehend that Jesus would be in just the regular hard stuff of life?
Well, I think that's more it. His unexpected appearance.
Yeah. It's an interesting one because the Greek talks about him that the people squawk like a raven. It's like that kind of panicky kind of thing. You know, it's like that real sense of losing all kind of sense of propriety and dignity and this absolute terror of what's coming in. It was so unexpected, and yet he'd sent them off. And you kind of think, well, surely they were expecting him to kind of join them. Obviously, it's a bit odd.
Well,
possibly on
the other side.
Yeah, once they got there.
You know, they had to take the boat back effectively.
Yeah.
And I think the implication was, you know, he was sending the crowds, because it's following on from that feeding of the 5,000 when so many people had walked around to where Jesus was.
Yeah.
And then he was taking time.
Yeah, so surely he'd be there waiting. So, I mean, how's that we have these expectations of where Jesus should meet us, and that, you know, Jesus should meet us when we've finished doing our little, you know, difficult moment, and then we pull into the shore and we, you know, come to church, or we've got ourselves together enough to be present in a place that we can meet Jesus. And yet Jesus says, that's not how it works. I'm going to enter into these places right when things are still chaotic and a bit of a shambles, and you're just in the midst of doing the hard stuff of life. I'm going to be there. I'm not going to be waiting on the shore, waiting for you to have sorted it all out so that you can then come and meet with me when you're feeling dignified. I'm going to be there right in the midst of it, which is quite reassuring, if slightly, yeah.
And I like to read before and after the passage to see what's happening, what has happened, what's happening next. And the interesting thing is, after that event on the lake, and the fear and the reassurance, and they make it to the other shore in the morning, and then word gets around that Jesus is there, and it's returning to business as usual, because people again flock to the lakeside with their sick, seeking healing and things, and many are healed. And I don't know, it's that it was a really special event for the disciples, part of that beginning, further understanding of who Jesus was and how he is engaging with all of life, which the crowds didn't see or saw in a different way. So it's quite a privilege, I think.
So there you go. Like, this is, the chat has gone in such a way that we're talking about how Jesus is there entering into the bits of life that maybe we kind of expect that he won't be there, that maybe we expect he should kind of politely wait at the shore and not do something dramatic like walking across water to enter our chaos. But that's the way Jesus is. That's who Jesus is, that Jesus enters the spaces that we maybe don't expect, or maybe even don't want him but he's wanting to transform those bits as well, that Jesus enters fully into all of our lives, all the stormy bits, all the chaos, and ultimately that's a good thing. But I'd love to hear what you have to say about that, what you think about that, whether you'd like Jesus just to stay quietly on the shore and be a good Jesus, or you know, what Jesus is truly like in your life. So join the chat, let me know what you think, and thank you, Richard, and have a good week.